Why would Jesus cross the entire ocean, face a storm, tread on territory considered impure, just to free a single demon-possessed man? When we read Mark 5, this question is unsettling. It seems disproportionate, complete crossing, an isolated man living among tombs in the region of the Gadarenes, a Gentile territory in the Bible, part of the Decapolis, culturally distant from Israel. And in the midst of all this, a shocking scene, demons and pigs, an entire herd lost, an entire city impacted. For many, it's just another miracle of Jesus. But is it really? If you've always thought this story is just about casting out demons in the Bible or about Jesus' power over demons, you may have missed the true meaning of Mark 5. There's something deeper happening here. There's a gesture, an intentional decision. Jesus crossed the sea knowing exactly where he was going. He entered a New Testament historical context marked by cultural and spiritual tension. He chose that setting. Have you ever experienced this? Have you ever wondered why God seems to move heaven and earth for something that, in human eyes, seems small? Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover may surprise you. This isn't just the story of the Gadarene demoniac. It's a revelation about value, about priority, about what truly matters in the kingdom of God. And as we delve into this explanation of Mark 5, we begin to realize that Jesus' gesture may be saying much more than we imagine. Because when we look more closely, we realize that Jesus wasn't just crossing a geographical sea, but crossing invisible barriers, cultural, spiritual, and emotional. He went to the region of the Gadarenes, Gentile territory in the Bible, a place avoided by many, to find someone everyone had already given up on. The Gadarene demoniac had no recorded name, no social standing, no dignity in the eyes of society. Yet Jesus went, and that changes everything. Perhaps you too have felt like you were in a distant territory, as if you were out of reach, as if your story were too complicated. Have you ever experienced this? Have you ever felt that no one would cross the ocean for you? The message of Mark 5 touches precisely on this sensitive point of the Christian faith, the value of a single soul. If this topic resonates with you, leave a comment below about what has touched you the most so far. I really want to read about your experience, your opinion, and what this passage awakens in your heart. Your participation here is what makes this channel grow and reach more people with this type of content. When you comment, YouTube understands that this message about Jesus needs to reach further. If this reflection has already begun to open your eyes to the true meaning of Mark 5, like the video, this simple gesture helps spread Jesus' teachings that often go unnoticed. And if you want to continue exploring the gestures, silences, and attitudes of Christ that reveal mysteries of the Bible, subscribe to the Jesus Beyond Words channel. Here we delve deep, together, into the Bible explained in a vivid and transformative way. Because what happens next in this story reveals something even deeper about the heart of Jesus. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because understanding the territory is fundamental to understanding the decision. The Decapolis wasn't just a point on the map. It was a Hellenized region, influenced by Greek culture, full of symbols that for many Jews represented impurity, distance, and a break with the spiritual identity of Israel. It was Gentile territory in the Bible, an environment seen as spiritually contaminated. It wasn't the kind of place a Jewish teacher would set foot in by chance. Do you realize the weight of this? Jesus didn't just enter any city. He crossed religious, cultural, and spiritual boundaries. He crossed prejudices. He crossed mindsets. He crossed invisible limits that defined who was inside and who was outside. And this reveals something powerful about transformation. Sometimes the biggest decisions aren't about comfort but about impact. They aren't about stability but about purpose. Back then, crossing the sea meant leaving the known area and entering unpredictable territory. It wasn't just a physical journey. It was a silent declaration. Jesus' gesture of crossing the sea was, in itself, a message. He was showing that the reach of grace knows no cultural boundaries, that the hidden truth of the kingdom of God is not limited to safe environments. And here's a revelation that touches our own mindset. How many times do we avoid certain territories in our lives? Uncomfortable places, difficult people, complicated contexts. Jesus did the opposite. He chose to go exactly where nobody wanted to be. This changes how we view priorities, decisions, and purpose. Because when we understand the behind-the-scenes aspects of this journey, we begin to realize that nothing was accidental. Each step was part of something bigger, and what happens in the encounter between Jesus and that man will reveal even more about this truth. If this is already opening your eyes, comment below, "This makes sense to me." When Jesus finally arrives in that territory no one wanted him to, something surprising happens. He doesn't make an announcement. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't launch into a fiery speech. He doesn't debate culture. He doesn't publicly confront the city. He doesn't try to prove anything. He simply arrives. And sometimes, presence is more powerful than any word. The man runs to him. A man dominated, wounded, isolated, living among tombs. Even before any human question, the demons speak first. The scene is intense, charged, almost chaotic. But observe Jesus' posture. There is no panic. There is no hurry. There is no impulsive reaction. There is control. There is awareness. There is silent spiritual authority. This detail changes our perception. Because Jesus' silence is not an absence of action. It is dominion. He doesn't react to chaos. He governs chaos. While the situation seems out of control, there is a hidden truth behind the scenes of that scene. Nothing there threatens his authority. This attitude reveals a completely different mindset from ours. How many times, when faced with conflict, do we let ourselves be carried away by the noise, the pressure, the emotional urgency? Jesus shows us another way. True strength doesn't need to shout. There is a transformation happening even before liberation. The impact begins with attitude. That man's journey begins the moment he meets someone who is not intimidated by his condition. And this reveals something profound about decisions and spiritual leadership. Those who know who they are don't need to prove anything. This scene holds powerful revelations about identity, authority, and inner balance. Because when presence is solid, confrontation loses its power to intimidate. And what happens in the next words exchanged there exposes even more the dimension of this silent authority. If this perspective makes sense to you, write this down: authority in silence. Because we've reached the most controversial point in this narrative. Why would Jesus allow demons to enter the pigs? Why would an entire herd need to die? And even more, why cause such a large economic impact on that region? These questions are not uncomfortable by chance. They reveal that there is something beyond the surface, something that requires maturity to understand. On a spiritual level, the mention of the legion shows the intensity of the oppression that man carried. It was not a simple conflict. It was profound, complex, overwhelming. The presence of so many spirits reinforces the weight of the invisible battle taking place there. When the demons enter the pigs and rush into the sea, what becomes visible is the dimension of what was hidden. It is as if Jesus were exposing the inner workings of that spiritual prison, bringing to light what no one saw. But there is a second layer, perhaps even more confronting: the financial loss. The local economy is affected. The damage is real. And here is the hidden truth that challenges our modern mindset. A soul is worth more than economic stability. A genuine transformation is worth more than comfortable structures. The impact of that man's liberation surpassed any material calculation. This decision of Jesus reveals eternal priorities that often clash with our own values. This scene challenges our own choices. How often do we measure decisions solely by their immediate cost? How often do we avoid actions that could generate transformation because we fear the impact? The journey of that liberation reveals a powerful insight into purpose, value, and identity. And when the city reacts to what happened, showing fear instead of celebration, we realize that the true confrontation may not have been merely spiritual. The true miracle doesn't end when the demons leave. The liberation was impactful, yes. It was visible, dramatic, impossible to ignore. But what happens afterward is even more powerful. The man who once lived among tombs, isolated, hurting himself, dominated by forces that no one could control, now appears clothed, in his right mind, sitting at Jesus' feet. This image carries a transformation that goes beyond the supernatural. It reveals a restoration of identity. Between living in tombs and sitting at someone's feet lies a profound inner journey. There has been a change of mindset, a change of position, a change of destiny. He is not just free, he is conscious. He is not just calm, he is aligned. This speaks of real impact, of what happens when someone finds purpose after chaos. True revelation lies not only in expulsion, but in reconstruction. And here's a detail that many ignore. The man asks to follow Jesus. He wants to leave that place. He wants to leave behind the territory that carries memories of pain, shame, and exclusion. Humanly, it makes sense. After an experience like that, who wouldn't want to start a new journey far from the past? But Jesus says no. This response defies expectations. Because sometimes the calling isn't to flee the environment, but to transform it. Sometimes the most powerful decision isn't to leave the territory, but to remain as a living sign of transformation. Jesus sends that man back to the Decapolis itself not as a victim but as a witness. He becomes proof of a hidden truth. When change is real on the inside, it generates an impact on the outside. This completely changes our perception of purpose and mission. And when we understand the weight of Jesus' decision, we begin to see that there is something even deeper in this story that needs to be revealed. If this perspective resonates with you, comment below, "Real transformation." When we put all the scenes together, we realize that the greatest lesson lies not only in the miracle, but in the gesture. Jesus crossed the sea. Jesus entered unclean territory. Jesus faced intense spiritual forces. Jesus endured the rejection of the very people who, instead of celebrating the transformation, asked him to leave. And yet, all of that happened because of a single person. This reveals something that challenges our modern mindset, so driven by numbers, visible results, and collective validation. The kingdom of God doesn't work by majority vote. It works by eternal value. The logic of heaven doesn't follow statistics. It follows purpose. A restored soul carries more weight than a preserved economy. True transformation has more impact than the approval of a crowd. There is a hidden truth behind this journey that changes how we view decisions and priorities. No place is too far away. No culture is too complex. No person is too insignificant. No situation is too irreversible. What seemed like just a geographical displacement was, in reality, a declaration about identity and purpose. Jesus showed that no territory is forgotten when someone is in need of restoration. And perhaps here lies the most profound revelation. The same Christ who crossed that sea continues to cross invisible borders today. He is not limited by contexts, labels, or personal histories. The impact of that crossing resonates as an invitation to review our own journey, our choices, and how we assess the value of the people around us. When we understand this, something begins to align within us. Because if the kingdom operates on eternal value, then our way of thinking also needs to undergo transformation. And it is precisely at this point that this story leads us to reflect even more on what it truly means to follow in the footsteps of Jesus. If this message resonates with you, write this down: eternal value. If you've made it this far, it's because this story resonated with you on some deeper level. Perhaps it's not just about a man in the Decapolis, but about how you begin to see value, purpose, and transformation in your own journey. And that's exactly the kind of revelation we seek to explore here, not just what Jesus did, but what his actions continue to say today. If this content added something real for you, consider subscribing to the Jesus Beyond Words channel. The goal here is to continue delving into these details that often go unnoticed, connecting context, attitude, and meaning in a clear and profound way. With each video, the idea is to go beyond the surface. And so I know you've walked with me to the end of this reflection. Write in the comments, "I'm with you until the end." I like reading these signs because they show that this journey is not solitary. It is built in community, conversation, and sincere searching. If at any point during this video you felt that silent connection, that insight that reorganizes your way of thinking, leave a like. It's not just a button. It's a reflection that this message found a place within you. And there's a video right here that perfectly complements this line of reasoning about Jesus' gestures and attitudes that reveal hidden truths. Click on it and continue with me there, because this journey still has much more to reveal.